Hey, welcome to What's the FIC, where two nerdy librarians, Gina and Meg, discuss everything from literature to movies, gaming, education, anime, manga, and more. All your favorite things you get geeked about, we talk about. Plus, we give you tips on all the latest free resources from the library. So, let's get into the FIC of it.
Hello, and welcome back to What's the FIC? We're your hosts, Meg and
Gina.
And today we have a very special episode, and we have a special guest with us today. But first, we're going to ask a few questions, some thought-provoking questions here. Are you a poet and didn't even know it? Do you enjoy verses that are thought-provoking and heartfelt and everything in between?
Then this episode is for you. And to help us talk about the topic of poetry, today we have a special guest, Mr. James Aaron Snow, who is our very own poet in residence. Mr. Snow, welcome to the show. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your unique position here at Augusta-Richmond County Public Library?
Yes, and thank you for having me on the podcast. First of all, I love all things local, whether it's coffee shops, restaurants, businesses, and of course, libraries. I love the heart and passion behind local businesses and agencies. Also, very dear to my heart is my three furry family members, Oscar, Benny, and Bella. You can see me quite often downtown or at the riverfront taking them for a walk. Feel free to give all the pets you want. They will take them all. As far as how I discovered that I was a poet, because I believe it is a journey of discovery. It was an accident in high school one day. I went to the classroom door. The door was locked, and I wrote a poem about it. And if you had to guess what the title of the poem was, I'm just gonna tell you, the door is locked. Not my best work. But thankfully I've worked on my originality since then. Kind of, honed the craft of writing. Also, I have a bachelor's in social work from Augusta University, and I'm currently working on my master's degree. So it's there's always something in motion. My role as poet in residence is very unique. I am the first in this role for a public library system in the state of Georgia. So this gives me the autonomy to just fully shape it.
Yes, thank you so much for introducing yourselves to our listeners. So I guess we can kind of jump into some questions here just to get to know you a little bit better and also get to know what's your role for this public library. So I just want to ask, so you are a poet in residence here, and can you kind of tell us a little bit of what that exactly means to be in this role?
So much like an art studio will have a painting or mixed media artist for a period of time that's on site at the gallery. The headquarters location on Telfair Street has me on site till March of next year. Now, every March, I'll meet with the Board of Trustees and we'll talk about kind of renewing that every year, and hopefully we will for years to come. But being on site, I coordinate programs, I coordinate events that, of course, are poetry centric. And also, because I'm not a painter, because I'm not a physical artist, I am working on my first collection of poetry. So I'm actually writing while I'm at the library as well. In doing that, being there, being available, if I'm on site and someone says, "Hey, is the poet in residence here?" I'm open to meeting with them because it demystifies who a poet is. Sometimes I feel like people think we're these word magicians and we conjure up poems in this dark room. And honestly, we're just people with a passion and determination to write our art.
Nice. That's amazing. All right. So it really sounds like you're looking forward to making your own, and hopefully people will have an opportunity to come by to see you. What are your own personal goals for the role that you have achieved? Like, what do you hope to achieve in your role while you're here?
Well, definitely this first year, just taking it slow, building relationships, getting to know the breadth of the library system. There's so much to offer, but there's kind of three main goals. One is spotlighting the current poetry community already in Richmond County. There are
Mm,
poets of all ages locally that are writing, that are sharing poetry, that are even doing like their own events, that are traveling, that we need to know about. So I want to spotlight them. The second one is giving individuals the opportunity to share their poetry for the first time. This
Mm,
this is just something, and every poet will tell you this. That first time on the microphone, the first time reading your own poetry, you never
mm,
forget it. It's just
mm,
it's a turning point. And I've seen so many individuals that they're able, once they do that, they can acknowledge and accept, hey, I am a poet. Like
mm,
this is really who I am, and take pride in that. And then the third one, of course, is just highlighting the vast and invaluable resources that our public libraries are. You know, we have
mm.
6 locations in Richmond County. They have so much to offer, and I just want to be a part of what you all are already doing, and that is bringing people through the front door of every branch.
Mm.
Yes, yes, we love to do that. Hopefully, we have
Yes.
some more programs coming up so we can get in with the community. But can you tell us anything about maybe some upcoming events or activities that our listeners can kind of expect, maybe to see from you um, with your role being the poet in residence?
Yes, I'm excited. Starting in September, we're going to start our monthly Poets Gathering. And so
Mm.
this will be the second Thursday of every month. It will be at the Telfair location on the third floor. Fortunately, I have a designated space that's just for us as poets. And this is for poets. This is for people who want to just hang out with poets and
Mhm.
come.
Mhm.
Again, it'll be that second Thursday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. You come in. I'm going to have it set up. If you want to put your earbuds in and write by yourself in the corner, you can. If you want to get in a group and discuss poetry, you can. It's up to the individual. Just come and be around other poets. I think that environment, that safe space, is very important. And then that will kind of roll into October and forward. We'll do a monthly open mic.
Mm.
So the Tuesday after the second Thursday, we're going to have an open mic in the auditorium at Telfair. Again, 6 to 7:30. It'll be just open your first time or your 100th time, or and again if you just want to come listen to poetry.
Mm,
I'm excited about that. And then the last one, of course, is our workshops. We did one back in April, and I'll be doing this quarterly. So every 3 months, the workshop is called "Am I a Poet?" And there are people, and really it could be called "Am I an Artist?" Because I talk about creativity. I talk about what is your desire to create. But of course, we really focus in on poetry. And then the second one I'm excited about will be poetry as protest. And so we'll reflect on how our poetry, in and of itself, is protest, and even what we can do currently to
mhm,
write poetry as a sense of protest. And so those workshops will be on Saturdays, like mid morning. Nothing super early, but that'll be on
mhm,
the third floor at Telfair. And the exciting thing about all of this is that it's free. It's
mhm.
going to be geared towards all ages, and it's open to the public. So just some great resources coming up starting next month.
Nice.
Wow, it sounds like some really like awesome stuff that you have
Mhm,
planned. I'm pretty sure like some people right now are just like, let me write all this down. Let me write all this
mhm,
down
mhm,
for sure. And I'm sure it'll be posted on our website. But I could definitely hear your passion for it. So I guess what I want to ask you next is, well, what does it mean to you? Like I hear how much passion you have about poetry, but what does it mean to you?
And that's a great question. And of course, you'll ask if you ask any poet, I'm sure you'll get a different answer.
mhm,
So personally speaking, I was like, how do I describe this? And basically all I can say is poetry is like the blood flowing through my veins. Like it gives life context, meaning, understanding. I have poetry on the brain all the time. It might
Mm.
be a stanza, it might be a title, it might be an idea for a poem. It's just it really that's probably, the best word, the context of daily life. It helps
Mhm.
me kind of grasp all of it,
Mm.
and I love that it's always in my head. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, where I'm at. I'm getting inspiration. I'm here for it. I love all of it.
Yes, yes. I was really, really, really into poetry probably when I was a little younger, when I was in high school.
Mm.
But I know there's so much content that's kind of out there floating around these days, and so many spaces for people to be creative. But for people who may just be getting into poetry or aren't really sure exactly what it is, could you like describe that? Wait, what exactly is poetry? Not just necessarily to you, but if you could give a definition to it, what would you say?
Um, and that, yeah, that's definitely a challenge to kind of be objective in this definition, and understand this is me defining poetry as a whole. The
Mm.
methods of delivering poetry are varied. So there are many discussions and even debates on how poetry is delivered, but poetry defined, poetry is the written description of the indescribable. And
Mm.
that's it. We can see it with a painter. A painter can take a sunset and with their hands just create something in it, and just we have understanding with that. And so it can be that, it can be your first experience of true love, it can be a loss of a dear friend. Poetry is somehow, I mean, even now I still struggle to understand like how these words can describe what we struggle so hard to describe, and that's what makes it precious. That's what makes it so weighty, is
Mm.
that it creates that framework, and it does so with like such a minimal amount of words.
Hmm.
Mm.
Just a few lines or a stanza can describe everything you've been feeling for years, but couldn't put words to, and all of a sudden you're like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what I've been trying to say,
Mhm.
and that is poetry to me.
Mm. I love that. I love that definition.
Yes, I do too. All right. Well, we're talking about poetry and you being a poet yourself. I'm sure you have a favorite poet. So definitely tell us who is your favorite poet and why they're your favorite poet.
And this is where you're like, do I be cliche? Do I pick someone relevant? Do I pick someone classic? Of course,
Whatever you
there's
want.
so many to choose from, but I sat with it for a little while and I was thinking about my response.
Mm.
And this poet, of all the poets I've read, I, like many people, I have many books of poetry that I have yet to read that are on my bookshelf. And even poets that I've met in person, heard in person, there's one poet that just encapsulates and captures my attention. And in 2019, I coordinated an event for Westaboo, and it was called the Catacomb and Chrysalis of Poetry. And Tyrese was one of our guest poets. We had a panel of poets, and the day he shows up, he has a stack of just notebook paper in his hand with his poems handwritten, and he's got this shirt on that just states in bold letters, "I am a poet." And already I was like, he had my attention. And at that point, he was in middle school, and he was talking
Mm.
about my influences are Harper Lee. I have an affinity for dancing and singing and drawing, and I was blown away. And that was before he ever got on the microphone and started reading this poetry, talking about
Mm.
his struggles in life. And I have no doubt, like the arts community will know about him very soon. But that young man, that passion, that drive, that confidence as a poet, I was like, everything that he ever publishes, I'm buying. Like
Oh,
Tyrese is my favorite poet by far.
I love
Oh,
that.
yeah, I really do. It's nice to see younger people kind of being able
Mm-hmm.
to get out there and put out their creative works, and be bold about it, as you were saying. Um, Sometimes I know it can be kind of difficult to write. I myself, I would like to think of myself as a creative person. I like to write music. And so I'll write songs. And sometimes I just get a block. So do you believe in a writer's block? And if so, like, how do you overcome it as a writer yourself?
And writer's block, you can also kind of put as just maybe just a creative block. Whether you're a musician or again a physical artist or something, you're like nothing's coming out, or I just can't think of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that whole concept is one of two things. It's either an absence of creativity and or the presence of fear. And so creativity is like a garden. It has to be cultivated. You have to nurture it if you want it to grow. You just don't wake up every day creative. Like, you have to do things that feed that. And then fear, you may have a fear when it comes to your writing for a number of reasons. That can be, how is my writing going to be interpreted by readers? How's the general public going to take it? Are they going to take it? Maybe a lack of experience in writing poetry. Maybe you're starting out, you're questioning your ability as a poet, who you are. But both are internal work that you've got to counter. Like, you have to be intentional about it. And so one of the things I recommend is do something you enjoy besides writing. Like,
Okay.
what is something like, take a walk, visit a coffee shop, photograph nature, like anything but write. Like, not on your phone, not on a piece of paper, not on a laptop. Like, do not write, but find something else you enjoy. And the second, very important, is surround yourself with people that support you as a poet. People are like, what are you working on now? When's your next poem coming out? Are you working on a collection or a chapbook of poetry? Man, the world needs that. They will help combat those fears. They will be that voice of encouragement on those days where you're just like, I can't do this. I'm not a poet. Because every artist, regardless of their medium, has those days.
Yeah, I agree.
I do too. I thought about that. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with those. For sure. Okay, so we're talking about poetry and mostly about it being a form of expression, a chance for us to get out those things that might be difficult for us to describe, right? So, what do you feel are like benefits for someone for writing poetry or even like performing poetry? Like, what do you think someone could like gain from that?
So my first thought with that, especially now with the social work degree, is how cathartic writing poetry can be. Like, writing poetry could physically help release emotions. It just, you feel something so intense. And again, whether it's your words or others, but especially when you write those words and you describe how you're feeling, it can literally help you take a deep breath. You just let it go. You just like, that's what it is. Now I can get a hold of it. And it helps you discover yourself. The more you're writing, the more you're sharing it. And even if you don't share it, just writing poetry in general helps you discover yourself. You begin to see common themes. What are you passionate about? Current issues that keep coming up in your writing, or things you're still pondering. What are these questions that I'm asking myself as a person? And in the right setting, performing poetry can be such a confidence builder. And this is, poets of any age, of course, but especially younger poets, to have that confidence building, to come to the microphone, like the poetry open mic that we'll be doing at the library. It'll be a place where there's encouragement, there's support, where people aren't there to critique you. They're there to cheer you on. They're in your corner and they're like, "Oh, that was amazing. That was beautiful. I can't wait to hear what you write next." That can make such a difference in an individual's life. So of course, I'm behind it 100%. We need more of it, and we're going to have more of it in the months ahead.
Yes,
Great.
I'm here for that.
Yes.
I'm definitely here for that. So I guess we've talked a lot about poetry, but I just want to ask, are there any other forms of maybe literature, entertainment that you enjoy? It could be anything like movies, music, any hobbies that you have outside of poetry?
So, as far as reading goes, it may come to a surprise to some, but I read a lot of nonfiction,
Mm.
and I have a regular diet of poetry in there. But I read a lot of nonfiction because I'm always striving to be a better me. I'm a firm believer in constant learning, constant growth, because I know if I'm better in any form, physically, mentally, emotionally, it's going to make me a better poet. It's going to feed in who I am as a writer. I do love music. I love varieties, but I have a special place in my heart for '90s music, and that's
Yeah.
'90s of any genre. To age myself, that was when I was a teenager, but I believe that '90s produced some of the best music out there.
I
I'm
agree.
just being
Yeah.
honest. I mean, I
Hmm.
mean the fact that they're coming back around on tour proves how amazing they were in different genres.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm an aficionado of all things coffee,
Okay.
cold brewing techniques, pour over methods, washed versus unwashed roasting, just all things coffee. I'm here for it. I love it all.
Awesome. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I totally agree about the 90s.
I do too.
Yeah, so that was my childhood, and I still am just like, yeah, I'm bumping the same stuff from back
Mhm.
then. But thank you. Thank you so much for like answering these questions for our listeners. I think that they're going to be excited to come and meet you and see you and participate in those programs. Y'all already know we got to give you at least a little bit of recommendations, and it's going to be a
Hmm.
short list today. We're going to go with two apiece. I know
Hmm.
that sometimes we get carried away with two recommendations apiece um, of poetry or poetry books that you can enjoy right here at your local library that you can either get through Pines or maybe you can just walk straight into the local library and pick up off the shelf. We're going to start with our guest, Mr. Snow. What are your two recommendations?
Two recommendations. Definitely, highly recommend Magic City Gospel. This is by Ashley M. Jones, and she is currently the poet laureate for Alabama, the youngest poet laureate and the first Black female poet laureate of Alabama. This was her first book out by Hub City Publications, and she has two more since. But this kind of set the stage for her writing. Um, just beautiful imagery, captivating, and especially I feel like younger voices will find themselves in her writing. And so just pick that up. There are copies within the Pine system you can get. And then Collected Poems. That's the title of. It's by C.K. Williams. And C.K. Williams, the imagery he wrote with he wrote about some current events like Vietnam War and stuff. And then he wrote just about urban life, people sleeping on the street, crime, the smell of the sewer. And so if you have a love for anything urban, highly recommend his work. If you're looking at writing more narrative poetry, definitely pick up Collected Poems by C.K. Williams.
Okay, awesome. Great recommendations. I'm going to go ahead and throw mine in here that I have, which is I probably will always like remember Nikki Giovanni. That was like, I feel like some of the first poetry that I ever heard that I was just like, oh, wow. And we happen to have the selected poems of Nikki Giovanni within the Pine system. My favorite one is Kidnap Poem. I don't know, maybe because I'm like love struck when it comes to certain things, but I always love Kidnap Poem just because of thinking of like, I never really thought about an overture to someone in that way. So I love that particular poem. So the selected poems of Nikki Giovanni. And then we studied a lot of Langston Hughes in school, I feel like. And I think one the first things I think about when I think about poetry is Langston Hughes. So we do have the collected works of Langston Hughes within Pines. I think one of my favorite poems from him. And actually, the first poem that I ever read out loud was Mother to Son. I had to do it for a class, but I just remember like it just so happened to be like one of my moms that she had introduced me to before at one point as well. And just getting a chance to like read it and for the mother to be explaining like my life has not been easy. It hasn't been easy, but I've continued to climb these stairs, to continue to push through all the difficulties. And I think that really resonated with me, and it still does even to this day. So those are my two recommendations. The selected poems of Nikki Giovanni and the collected works of Langston Hughes.
Oh wow, those are great. You guys just sound so poetic, just even describing the works that I'm just like, oh my God, what am I supposed to say now?
Nah.
But I guess for me, kind of going to what you were saying, Gina, about what you think of when you think of poetry. For me, it was always Maya Angelou. I think growing up, that was probably like my first exposure to poetry. Was just that in school, as well as one of my teachers actually recited "And Still I Rise" by Maya Angelou, and I think that was just very memorable for me. The words just have so much weight, and I feel like she just has such a way with words that I just love it. And then, of course, kind of getting to something a little more fun. I remember growing up, I read a lot of Shel Silverstein. So Where the Sidewalk Ends. A lot of his work is kind of like whimsical and funny, but it was just enjoyable to read. I loved it as a kid. I still love it now, so those would be my two recommendations.
Awesome, y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for keeping it at 2. I appreciate it.
We could go on and on.
This definitely ran, a little long, but I think it was a great conversation. But to our listeners, of course, thank you again for tuning in. Or if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you for listening. I hope you really enjoyed our conversation with Mr. Snow. I felt like it was just so like enlightening and like I think it was really invigorating, especially just the way that Mr. Snow were talking about creativity and different things like that. So I hope that you definitely give yourself a chance to take on that opportunity. Come join some of the events. Come participate in the activities, the workshops, the open mic. You have all these things. And of course, they will be posted on the website. Maybe you could come back to the podcast and listen to it again and get the information that you need. But that will be all that we'll be having for today. Make sure that you come back next month. We're going to have another episode for you. As always, we say,
we've got the fit.
So stick with us. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Tune in for new episodes every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. If you like hanging with your friendly, nerdy librarians, follow our library on Facebook at ARCPLS or on Instagram and Twitter at Augusta-GA-Lib. Like we always say, we've got the fit, so stick with us.